Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm very excited today. He's done such films as Over Her Dead Body, Sonny and Cher Love, Christmas Wish, and of course, who could ever forget his epic performance in One Tree Hill. It is my honor to introduce to you the one and only Colin Fickes. And Colin, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor.
Thank you for having me.
So, Colin, the first thing I would ask is, how did you get into acting?
I started when I was really young. I started doing community theater in Raleigh, North Carolina. There's a great group of theaters locally there in Raleigh. And so that's kind of how I got started. I played a little bit of sports growing up. It wasn't really so good at that. And definitely kind of found my way throughout the arts, working in some community theater productions as a kid.
Right. And Colin, I know in this business, a lot of the times they say you got to go to Hollywood. That's where you're going to get your big break. But being in North Carolina, I mean, it probably wasn't always easy to get, those type of connections. So over time, I mean, did you end up having to go out to California?
Well, so we got really lucky in North Carolina because in the mid-90s, production started leaving New York and LA and coming to different areas of the country where there were really significant tax breaks for the industry. And so a lot of production started happening in the early 90s in North Carolina on the East Coast in Wilmington, which is actually where One Tree Hill was filmed. And so I got really lucky and was able to start auditioning for projects that were coming through the region back in the 90s, and did my first film when I was, I don't know, I would have been maybe 12 or so. It was it's called The Hudsucker Proxy. It was a Coen Brothers film that was shot in Wilmington, and got to do a nice little quick scene with Tim Robbins, and then I went on to do Dawson's Creek when that came to the area, and I was still doing some theater in the middle of all of that locally in Raleigh, but was able to start auditioning and really learning how to figure out acting for TV and film versus stage acting, and just got really lucky. And then that eventually helped me get an agent in New York, which, I moved to New York in 1999. And then eventually in 2002, moved out to Los Angeles and was out there for 10 years. So, yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned Dawson's Creek because when I had Carol Potter on the other day, I talked about how 90210 really put Fox on the map. That's the show that really got them over. And I really believe Dawson's Creek is what got the WB over back in the 90s, because that show came on, I want to say, in 97, and it really took off. I mean, it was kind of like the next generation of 90210, a teenage show. And I mean, it really helped a lot of the careers of, Katie Holmes, James Van Der Beek, and of course the WB. I really felt like WB became a major player on TV.
I completely agree. Yeah. It spawned a lot of shows after that. There was Felicity and all those shows that were kind of happening and focusing on the younger demographic at the time.
Exactly. So let me ask you, Colin, what was I going to, did your parent, was it difficult with schoolwork and stuff? I always wonder about that, because when you're trying to make it in this business and stuff like that, I mean, it's not easy to maintain your education as well. So was that difficult in the beginning?
Well, I did drop out of college to go do a horror film. So I guess in that sense, it was not easy to juggle. I just was kind of just not in the place for, well, let's go back. Starting even in elementary and middle and high school, I was always looking out the window, hard to focus, super creative type. I mean, I made good grades, but I would study for a test, and then 2 weeks later, if you asked me a question from the test, I couldn't really the answer. And so it was highly creative as a kid, and would always just be daydreaming and looking out the window. So, I didn't really love school a whole lot. And then, like I said, in college, I got an audition in my first year of college for a horror film. So I was unable to juggle it with school. So I ended up just dropping out of college to do this movie. But then it was a great experience because I met all these other actors from LA and New York who were around my age, and they were doing what they loved. And my dad had passed away a couple months earlier, and so I was just kind of at this place in my life where I didn't really want to be in school, and I was figuring it out, and I was realizing that life is really short, after the death of my father. So that's when I moved to New York. So, not always the easiest to juggle, education with film and TV. Some people do it really well and others not so much. So,
right. Now, let me ask you, growing up as a kid, I mean, was there an actor or a certain film or show that really inspired you? Did you have a favorite actor or actress? I mean, I always wonder about that because, when I watch TV and stuff, there's always people you kind of like really admire. I think of Michael J. Fox, but I mean, was there anybody that you really admired?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in my late teens, I really started to follow closely the career of Philip Seymour Hoffman. I think he's an incredible actor. And, he was always those were always roles that I felt like, oh, God, those are kind of the roles I would love to play. I knew I would always be a character actor, and it's important as an actor to kind of know your range and know kind of your limits or not limits perhaps, but kind of your arena. And I just always knew I would be a character actor. And so seeing his career take off in the late 90s was just awesome. And he's definitely someone I looked up to. And then as I got older, I really fell in love with Frances McDormand. I think she's an amazing actress. But yeah, those would probably be my two favorite actors. If I just had to, I could probably list more, but yeah, those come to mind right away.
And not a bad couple actors to kind of emulate. I mean, they are tremendous and have had tremendous careers, obviously. But is it difficult, Colin, when you guest star on a show and you're coming into their show and they've been together for a few years, whatever it is, and you're going to guest star for a couple episodes, possibly, maybe even one? I mean, I'm sure you enjoy that, but is it difficult as well?
It's a little difficult in the sense that they kind of already have a rapport. They're kind of already kind of like a family. And when you're coming into their environment, you want to be super respectful and, you're kind of just a guest in their world for a little bit, whether that's for one episode or 10 or whatever it may be. So, but, for the most part, everyone was super welcoming in those situations and, super just kind and open and like I said, welcoming. And, but yeah, I mean, it's a little scary because you're kind of coming in and meeting a lot of new faces and you're there for just such a brief bit of time. So, and sometimes you come in and you don't know if it's going to be one episode or 4 episodes or you're just kind of wading the waters and seeing what's going to happen. So, yeah, it's interesting as a guest actor for sure.
Yeah. And Colin, you've done films over the years. Some you've had big parts in, some just small parts. But each film you've done, you've always added something to it. And let me ask you, I mean, do you look at it as it doesn't matter how many scenes I'm in? If I'm in the film, it's important because, I mean, I could think of Over Her Dead Body. You were tremendous in that. And I mean, maybe not as in many scenes as you like, but you still made an impact in that movie.
Oh, well, thanks. I mean, it's so funny. You're the first person to ever mention that movie. So, yeah, it was a really small part. I just worked one day on that. But got to work with Paul Rudd and Wendy McClendon Covey. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And had a really good time doing that and worked with a dog, which was cool, like a huge dog. It was a kind of like a pratfall or type scene. And I enjoyed it, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a famous saying, there's no small parts, only small actors. And so, I was just lucky to get a job and work as an actor. I think that's what, as an actor, that's just all you can kind of hope for, whether that's for one line or no lines or a lot of lines. So, was just happy to work. So.
Exactly. And another film I really enjoyed was 10 years later. It was kind of like friends returning after 10 years out of high school. And I mean, you were tremendous in that. Your character, Drew, was really funny. Talk about that movie a little bit.
Oh my gosh. That's another movie that no one has ever brought up. So that's so cool that you're bringing that up. Yeah, that was interesting. That was, I think, a casting director that I had worked with for another film I did called Crystal had brought me in for that. And just really enjoyed, this was a million years ago. So apologies if I'm trying to recall the memories, but I remember the creator of that was really wonderful, and I knew I wanted to be a part of it. And happy to go in, even if it was just for one scene. I remember it was crazy hours. I think my call time for that was like in the afternoon, and we didn't shoot the scene until the morning after. So it's kind of crazy in the sense that, and that definitely, I think, affected my performance, hopefully in a good way, because it was an interesting little character choice that I made there. But yeah, that was fun to do. I mean, I only went in for just a little bit, but enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, and it's those type of movies, Colin. Sometimes maybe they don't get as much recognition as like the bigger movies do,
right.
But those movies are always fun, and they're great to watch, especially like on a rainy day or something like that where you're bored and you have nothing to do, and
right.
you could just watch a great movie like that, kind of sit back. And those are the type of movies that I think sometimes people underrate a lot when they really shouldn't.
No, that's so fun to find a movie that maybe is a little more under the radar. That's entertaining and fun to watch, and that's so cool that you've seen that film.
Yeah, tremendous film. And another one I like, and I want to say it came out in either 2018, 2017, was you reunited with a couple of the Tree Hill cast in A Christmas Wish. I believe I believe Tyler was in that, Hillary, and also Lee, if I'm not mistaken. So that was a great movie. And talk about that, because, that was, I love the Christmas movies, and I thought that was just another great movie.
Awesome. Yeah, Antoine was in that as well.
Yes, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I had never done a Christmas movie before, and so got to work with some really great people, some new people that I had never worked with, and then a lot of old friends that I got to work with again. And we just had so much fun doing that. I think it was more fun behind the scenes than in front. But yeah, we just shot down in Louisiana in a small town, Ponchatoula, and had a great producers on that, and really wonderful director named Emily, and we had a really good time doing it.
Yeah, and you talk about guest starring on shows, Colin. A show that you guest starred in the early 2000s, which I thought it should have got more than 4 seasons. It was a great show, and I think you either played a guy named Tommy, maybe Tony. It was in Boston Public, and that was another great show. And you talk about the cast of characters in that. I mean, that show was not only drama, there was a lot of comedy in that show, and it was a tremendous show. So just talk about your one appearance on that show.
Oh my gosh. I remember I was so excited about that because that was one of the first gigs I booked when I moved to Los Angeles, and I had gone through a long spell of really not booking a lot. And I've had a few of those where it's like you work a lot and then you don't work. And so I just remember being really excited to get that. And I remember we shot that out in Manhattan Beach at the studios out there in California. And it was a really cool experience. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, tremendous cast. And I mean, you talked about Dawson's Creek, the couple episodes that you guest starred on that, which was a tremendous show. But a show that, you knew we were going to get to, and that was, of course, One Tree Hill. And interestingly enough, Colin, I remember watching that first season, and it was disappointing in this sense that they seemed to have kept every character that the character Lucas was friends with. But after 2 episodes, you just vanished, and there was no explanation. And I always said, God, what happened to this kid? And then we find out in season 3, he returns, which we'll get to in a second. But let me ask you, when you first auditioned for that small role of Jimmy Edwards at the time, did he tell you it was only going to be for an episode or 2? I mean, what was the conversation you had with him?
I think it was going to be a recurring role throughout, but they didn't really quite know how much. And full transparency, I know the creator wanted to have us in there, both Lee and I, a lot more. And then I do think that there was some notes from the studio where they wanted to focus more on some of the other characters. And so slowly my role had started to get cut out of some of the finalized scripts for the next episodes. And so I actually had to leave the show because, I was told I would be in the first 4 episodes and that it would be significant. And it ended up changing. And so I was still living in Los Angeles, but still, paying rent there and trying to find a place where I had to put myself up in Wilmington. And it just got to be where I couldn't really afford to stay. And they wouldn't budge on, continuing to write me in more. So my manager, and I discussed it, and I decided to just leave the show strictly because I couldn't really afford to stay. And in a way, it worked out beautifully because it it was a way to kind of explain the absence several seasons later.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of explains why I was only in the first 2 episodes.
Right. And I'm always interested about this, Colin. When guys, are in their early 20s or even middle 20s, and then they have to try to be high school kids again in a TV show or a film. I mean, I'm sure like you have fun playing the parts and stuff, but I mean, is it a little strange sometimes going back to high school when you've already done all that and then you have to try to be a kid again?
A little bit. I mean, you're having to shave every day. So that's something that you have to do. And, for sure, it was something that I always kind of struggled with in my career when I was working as an actor, because I was always wanting to play the older roles, like not that younger roles can't be complicated, but, I was always fighting that I always looked young. I always kind of had a baby face up until a couple of years ago, and now I have gray hair everywhere. But, always kind of had hoped to start playing either my age or older. And, that was the thing that I always struggled with. But I was, again, to what I said earlier, as an actor, really, you're just looking to work whenever you can. So whether that's playing an 18-year-old or not, just grateful for the experience. So,
yeah. And the first couple episodes you were in I thought you and Lee had such great chemistry. I mean, you two were the broadcasters. You would pretend you were announcing the River Court game when they were playing. And then one funny moment in the second episode you did is Barry Corbin's character comes out and he says, "What are you two doing?" And you're telling him how you're ravenshoop.net. And he goes, "Well, not in here. You're not. Get out of here. No media." And you hear Lee say to you, "Did you hear that? We're media." And then you come up with the funny line, "Not just media, banned media." So I really felt like in the beginning, there was such potential for the Jimmy Edwards and Mouth McFadden characters to be the best of friends. Like I really felt like they were friends with Lucas and Skills and Fergie and Junk, but they were really two best friends. Like if you were Batman, he was Robin. So
totally.
That part was unfortunate that like there wasn't that more scenes or more episodes that you got to do with Lee. So talk about working with him a little bit.
Yeah, no, Lee's great. And I think why it works so well is I've known Lee for a very long time. We grew up auditioning in North Carolina. He had gone out to LA as a child for quite a bit of time, and then had been back in North Carolina. So there were times in our childhood where, we would meet up in Wilmington for auditions. And so Lee's always been he's one of the nicest guys in the world. And so I've known him a long time. And I think that's what helped with some of our chemistry, and just always enjoy working with him. He's such a pleasure, and, always does great work, and just the nicest guy. So, and he's also really, really funny. Yeah. And so obviously that made it work as well. So, yeah.
And so let's get to season 3. They bring you back, I think, around episode 15. And we see that this Jimmy Edwards character is in a dark place. But I really looked at it as this. He was a kid who just felt like, number one, he was betrayed by his best friends. And number two, he was being bullied and picked on all the time. Mm-hmm. And you see this a lot, but it felt like where they were going with this is the character Jimmy just felt like there was no other choice, because he just felt like he wasn't being accepted. Talk about that episode, but talk about having to play a different type of character like that.
I loved it because as much as I love doing comedy, I really always gravitated towards like the more serious, dramatic roles. And so I loved the character turn. I thought the writing was really well done for the episode. And so it wasn't easy, but it also, the writing made it much easier to do, because as an actor, everything you need is, for the most part, is in the script. And so, yeah, I mean, it was tough, but I think, you just kind of get into the shoes of someone who has been betrayed or feels like they've been betrayed. Because I think in Jimmy's case, a lot of it was internal for himself. I don't think people set out to just leave him by the wayside. I think it was a lot of internal struggle and feeling different, or dealing with all the things that he was dealing with at home. And so, I enjoyed exploring all of those feelings and trying to communicate that through the episode.
And I'll tell you, what a performance you gave in that episode. It was unbelievable. I mean, you saw the emotion, the passion that you gave to that Jimmy Edwards character. And I mean, throughout that whole episode, you get mad at Jimmy at times. You feel so sorry for him at times. But then, you're happy in one sense that he does the right thing. I mean, you don't want to see him ever like take his own life, but he didn't hurt anybody. But the worst part about that episode was the way it ended, because for a long time, it made the Jimmy Edwards character look like he killed Keith Scott. So it was like an episode where I just felt like it made you mad at times. It made you feel good that he knew what he was doing was wrong. But then, like, the way it ended, it was so tough. It was tough because you lost two popular characters, in my opinion. Yeah. So, I mean, talk about that a little bit.
Well, that's just all the writing. I mean, it's really not me at all. It was just kind of the way that the script was written, and but that was pretty powerful. That you kind of lost two characters like that in one episode. That was really interesting, and and the fact that the audience was kind of in on it and knew that Jimmy didn't do it. I think that adds an element of like suspense about what would happen moving forward and how it would all come out and get resolved. So it was a really complex episode. I think you're right. And I just had a lot of fun doing it.
And I mean, for you, like, it has to be one of your career highlights, because I mean, you got to give the episode really focused around you. Like, it was your episode. You got to like show what a great actor you were, because fans just saw you a little bit. They didn't really see you enough to see the type of actor you were. That episode to me showed what kind of actor Colin Fickes was, because you really were tremendous in that episode.
Well, that is very kind to say, Mike. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Colin, since then, I mean, like I mentioned some of the great films you've done and stuff, but what are you doing these days? Like, what is the future for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I left acting in 2012. Only went back to it for the Christmas movie that we discussed, because Hillary reached out to kind of bring me into the fold to that, which I was so grateful for. I'm still pretty creative in my life. I work for a nonprofit here in the Hudson Valley. And so I'm in upstate New York. I'm married, enjoy family and friends. And I really love what I do as a job. We basically do workforce development. We train people living in the Hudson Valley to work in TV and film in below the line crew positions. So behind the scenes, not as a director, really actor or producer, but more grip and electric, camera, sound, accounting, just, you name it. There's a job for everyone in this industry. And we're really all about access and inclusion. We believe that, this industry has a lot of people that look like me, which are white cis males. And, we think there's a room or seat at the table for more women, BIPOC, veterans, just, anyone and everyone that feels like they've been barred access to this amazing industry. And so I love what I do. And, it's still part of kind of the industry that I love, and it's all the good parts with all the amazing crew that comes together to make a film and TV show happen. So still doing what I love, just not really acting as much. Yeah.
Right. And like, let me ask you this now. Obviously, I know that your character in One Tree Hill passed away, but in TV, they always do things a little crazy. There's always a potential to somehow return. If they've always talked in the past about doing a One Tree Hill reboot, would you definitely come on an episode here and there if they asked you to?
Absolutely. I would do that in any capacity, as a ghost, as some other alternate universe, playing another character even. I would 100%, if I could make it work with my schedule, I would absolutely do that if I was asked back.
And I think what you're doing is awesome right now, because again, I mean, people don't realize the work that goes into doing that. I mean, it's a lot of hours too. It's just like being an actor, because you have to put a ton of time in to do something like that. So no matter what you seem to do, you have free time on your hands at moments, but like, you definitely have, your plate full a lot of the times.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah.
And so, I thought about another movie you did, which was pretty cool, was Transformers. Now, if they ever, were to come back with something like that again, they've made a ton of them. Would you definitely do that again? Because that was pretty
Absolutely.
fun. Yeah, I mean, you were awesome in that as well. And I just look at this, Colin. You in your career, like I said, maybe you haven't hit like the big movie that everybody talks about, but everything you seem to do, like I said, you made an impact in what you did, and that's a credit to you as an actor. I mean, do you look at your career? It's been like over 20 years now as an actor. Do you look at it and say, you know what? I have no regrets. I'm very satisfied with how my careers went.
No regrets, because I think it's like with anything in life, you don't do it for what potentially could happen, or the size of the movie, or what kind of, you're not really thinking about the impact or whatever it may be, how it's big or small. I think we all do things in life because we want to do it and because we're drawn to it, and you just focus on doing good work, whether that's cleaning toilets, working as an actor, working in an office, working at a nonprofit, whatever it may be. It's like you just kind of try to do the best that you can do and not think about outcomes and think about just doing good work. And I try to do that in whatever I'm doing. So yeah.
Well, Colin, I really do appreciate you giving me a few minutes today. Like I said, it was a real honor for me. I've always enjoyed what you've done in your films, and it started with One Tree Hill, but because of One Tree Hill, it made me watch other stuff you did. And like I said, I mean, Over Her Dead Body was a classic. 10 years later, I love, and that's a credit to you. And I really do applaud you as an actor, but also as a person, because I think what you're doing in your life is very inspiring. And I really do, like I said, applaud you for that. So thank you for giving me a few minutes today.
Well, Mike, thank you for your time. This was such a wonderful interview. You're clearly super prepared, and thank you for watching. I'm honored, and thanks for asking me to be on your show.
Well, thank you again. And folks, there you have it. That's the one and only Colin Fickes. He was a tremendous actor throughout his career. What he's doing today is wonderful, but we were so fortunate to see him in so many things over the years. And he really is a credit, not only to the acting industry, but also who he is as an individual, because that stands out to me more than anything else. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying goodbye, everyone.